Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to today's session. Thank you for joining us. My name is Celeste. I'm based in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for the Southern Conandes region. I'm super happy to be here with you today. Please write in the chat where you are joining us from. And today's session is around well-being. So it's what is well-being, why does it matter, and how is it relevant to the pre-primary English classroom? So before we start, we have some housekeeping here for all of you. A notice that you will receive a follow-up email with the certificates and the recording link after the event. It should arrive by tomorrow. Cameras and microphones are off, as you can see, but the comments are on. So please write all your comments, engage with the presenter, write your questions in the chat box. After the session, you will see that a survey will pop up from Zoom. So we would love to hear from you. Please take some seconds to answer it. It's a very short 2-question survey that will help us improve our upcoming sessions. So before we start, we wanted to let you know about this super new tool. It's called the Teachers Hub. It's a pilot website from Cambridge. It's a free site in which you will have access to a new AI lesson planner that it will help you in lots of ways, but mostly will save you time and energy. There are lots of teaching resources and also the interactive versions of teachers' books as from Unlock, Think, and Supermind. So please try it now. You can scan this code or you will also get the link in the follow-up email. So today's speaker is Helen Kenyon. She is a product manager for Cambridge English based in Cambridge. Helen is a certified product manager in the school's English team at Cambridge University Press and Assessment. She develops a wide range of educational materials from course books to video games and has been key in launching courses like Power Up and Kidsbox. Helen is passionate about inspiring young learners to develop lifelong learning skills through creative methods and enhancing teachers' classroom experiences. She has traveled extensively, engaging with educators worldwide on topics such as integrated assessment, digital pedagogy, and student motivation. Helen has delivered numerous presentations globally, sharing her insights on young learners' education. And before publishing, she taught English in Japan and Hong Kong and worked in television broadcasting. So Helen, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Hello, I'm here. Thank you for that introduction, Celeste. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Lovely to see. I love seeing all the names and the countries popping up. Ecuador, Buenos Aires, a few times. Yeah, really nice. It's nice to think that I'm sitting in a cold part of the east of England and I'm talking to people on the other side of the world. Isn't that wonderful? It's a nice part of my job that I like very much. It is the evening time here, so it's 9 o'clock. So that's why I'm in the darkness. If it she looks very, she doesn't look like she's in the daylight. No, it's the evening time here. But I am very much excited to talk to you today about well-being and about pre-primary learners. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's get my slides up. And you can, just a second. I'm not used to using Zoom so much. So this is always, it always becomes a challenge to, there we go. Can everybody see that? Is that
Yes,
coming through,
Helen.
everyone?
It's
Perfect.
working fine.
You always get a few clicks before I get to this main stage, so thank you for your patience for that. So today we are talking about well-being. And what is it? It's a word we hear a lot, but what does it actually mean? Why does it matter? Why are we hearing it so much? And then how is that relevant to pre-primary? The pre-primary classroom is quite unique. We'll have an opportunity to discuss that amongst ourselves. But what do we mean by well-being in the pre-primary classroom? Because we talk a lot about it as adults maybe and about our own well-being, and we talk about children's well-being, but really we want to think about, well, how does that operate in the pre-primary space? Um, as mentioned by Celeste, I work predominantly on materials for young learners and very young learners, so that pre-primary and primary age. I've worked in this area for about 20 years and I love it. I think this age group is a brilliant age to be involved in because it's so creative, it's demanding. I mean, demanding of you as teachers and lots of energy, but it's a really fun part of the learning journey to be involved in at the beginning. So I'm quite enthusiastic today to talk to you about how we can enhance that experience for you in the classroom and also how we can really set our learners up to enjoy coming into school, enjoy their learning, and well-being plays a part in that. So today we're going to talk about what is well-being, why does it matter? We'll talk a little bit about some research around that from psychology, from Cambridge, ourselves, some education policy as well. We will talk about the context of very young learners and the English classroom. So I'm going to be using the term very young learners and pre-primary interchangeably. We'll talk about some maybe the challenges of that, but then also some of the characteristics of this age group and what makes it so interesting to teach, but also it can be, there's a lot of energy involved and why that is. And then we'll get down to some practical tips for integrating wellbeing into the classroom. So hopefully some things you can take away and you can use in your classroom practice. Would very much encourage you to put things in the chat. So if you have thoughts, if you have comments, if you have questions, pop them in the chat. We want to encourage kind of discussions amongst yourselves as much as me talking to you. So maybe you might have an opinion. Please do share that and put it in the chat. We will have 10 minutes for Q&A at the end of this session. So there will be time for really specific questions. Celeste will help me with that because I have to kind of monitor the chat as well. So we'll definitely have dedicated time at the end to answer those specific questions that you have. Okay, let's get started. So what is well-being? Why does it matter? I'm just going to think about traditional education. Look at that black and white picture on the left. The traditional idea of what education is and what we thought we needed to do as educators in those decades gone by. And there was a real focus on very traditional skills. So focusing on literacy, focusing on numeracy. There was a real emphasis on developing those basic academic skills, essentially. And that meant that there was a heavy emphasis on rote learning, heavily relying on memorizing things, repeating things to reinforce all that learning, to reinforce those skills. And of course, we wanted to measure progress. So we had very standardized benchmarking. We wanted to assess student performance. It was very much an academic environment. But with today's learners, we know that their world has changed and their needs are changed. So we now know that yes, all of those academic skills are important, but we also need to go beyond that. We need to think about a more holistic approach, certainly for children starting right at the beginning of their education journey. We need to think of a holistic approach to learning. They're going to be learning for many, many years. They're going to be going through primary, through secondary, maybe university, learning in jobs that they have. It really doesn't stop. So we need to ensure that actually we're giving them the skills to do that beyond just the time that we have them. So we can't just teach them the academic anymore. It has to be a more holistic approach. That means that they're going to need some capabilities around their kind of social and emotional skills, because that also has to travel with them on their learning journey. And we also need to help them to adapt. We know that this age group, particularly very young learners, they're changing daily on a daily basis. Their bodies are changing, they're learning new things every day, and we have to support them to be able to adapt to that. I know definitely when we develop our primary materials, that adaptability is key, because every year there's a huge change. If you think about the age of a 3-year-old to a 6-year-old, there's a big change going on there. So we have to support them with that. And then also the resilience that you need with learning, because we don't all learn on a nice straight line and we just go up and up and up and up. That isn't how learning happens. It goes up and then it might go down and then up a little bit more and maybe down again. And we have to help children to understand that there will be lots of successes, but there'll also be some disappointments, and that's okay. And we need to carry on going. So we're thinking about well-being in the context of moving beyond that traditional idea of what education is, and thinking about how we think about the learner-centered idea. So making sure that we're thinking about the learner and their whole idea of education, and not just academic skills. This is something that I discovered around well-being, and when we started using the term. Essentially, Dr. Martin Seligman was the president of the American Psychological Association, and he came up with the PERMA model. And the PERMA model has 5 components, and those 5 components contribute to what we now use as the term well-being. So the 5 components are positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishments. And Dr. Siegelman said, with those 5 areas, if we address those 5 areas, then we can promote good well-being. So this is where the term came from. It was quite late, 2012. It's not been around for a really long time. But that's where the well-being word comes from. And we'll return to some of those components throughout this session. And for us at Cambridge, we look at well-being in the context of education in lots of different areas. So not just in language learning, we look at it for all of our educational materials and how we can support teachers with their well-being and their learners' well-being. And so at Cambridge, we define this as how individuals feel and how they function in the context of education. So feeling about how we ourselves are satisfied with our own lives from our point of view. So recognizing and managing our emotions, whether they are positive or negative, is how we feel. And it's also then about how we function in our personal development. So that means how we can engage with others. So how we engage in meaningful activities, how we interact in our experiences, and how we adapt to different evolving contexts. So how we feel and how we function is how Cambridge defines well-being. And this has a huge consequence, or huge impact, should I say, on learning. So another Cambridge book, this is around healthy habits. And in this book, it's done by two doctors again. It talks about how better well-being has a big impact on better cognition. So it enables us to learn. So it's really important in the context of education that we have good well-being because it will affect our language development, it will affect our motor skills. And it even says in this book about how early childhood is the critical period for that. So it isn't something that we just need to think about for teenagers or adults. Actually, starting from this pre-primary age is really important because we're setting up those building blocks. And if we can help students with those healthy habits from this young age group, that will see them well for the next steps in their language learning journey. Another definition, I give lots of definitions here. This was really just to say that you might have heard the term social and emotional learning. At Cambridge, we kind of use both social emotional learning and well-being. We kind of use them as both in the same way. So lots of areas for social emotional learning around knowledge and skills and attitudes, managing your emotions, your goals, the relationships. They have a lot in common with well-being as well. So if you see things around the social emotional learning, we're talking about the same area. And if we wanted to think about what happens when we don't address these areas, then we had the pandemic as a really obvious, or really not obvious, an example of what happens when it's not there. And we have a report by Dr. Tim Oates, who is our Director of Research here at Cambridge, and it talked about the effect of the pandemic on schools in particular, and what that meant when the social and emotional well-being needs weren't addressed. And the report particularly calls out difficulties for learners with interpreting instructions, concentrating, or even completing tasks. They weren't able to finish a task. So it really showed in this report around how language development was delayed, the social interaction was lost, and that had serious consequences. It meant that there was cognitive decline, and the rate of emotional and social development was a lot slower. So we've seen also, unfortunately, how if we don't have good well-being, the effects that has on our learners. And we want them to thrive in classrooms. So it is very important. So the benefits of incorporating well-being enhances motivation, concentration, and decision making. It increases student engagement, the social skills, and it boosts their confidence. And then ultimately it has better learning outcomes. So that includes all subjects, reading, maths, and language learning. It can help with the classroom behaviour, and it builds up resilience. So that's why we're talking about it today. And that's why we're going to be looking at incorporating it into our classroom practice. Let's think then about very young learners in the English classroom, and I am going to ask if you can provide some answers for this bit. What is a very young learner? So pop your answers in the chat. What do you think? What are the characteristics of a very young learner? I'm going to just have a look at the chat now, see what kind of thing do you think, what personality traits do they have? Curious individual, that's a lovely description. That's very nice. Playful, definitely playful. What else? What do you think of when you think of this age group? 3 to 6 years. Energy. Yes. Yeah, Doris, new to the language. Yes, that's important, isn't it? Because it's actually not just a different language, they're actually learning their own language as well. Yes, learning by repetition, lots of repetition, when they want to hear the same song over and over and over again. Lovely. Okay, so great. You've all got experience of this. Oh, I like that one. Monica says they ask all the time, why? 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 Um, that incorporates repetition and curiosity. So yes. But you've all got lots of experience of this age group. That's lovely. Yeah, I love this age group, but yes, they have energy and we need lots of energy as well. So okay, so this is actually some of the things that you've already come up with. So we're talking about a very young learner. We're talking about an age group of about 3 to 6 years. That's what we're talking at in this session. Young learners, we'd say about 6 to 11. We're talking about this pre-primary age, 3 to 6. Reading and writing. Oh, some can't hold a pencil. This is such early stages for any kind of literacy. So we should not have high expectations at this stage. This is new to them. Short attention span. So yes, keeping their attention is going to be a challenge, isn't it? Because that curiosity sparks and off they go. They learn quickly and then they forget quickly. That's quite endearing, but that's understandably why repetition becomes very important. Study skills. I mean, this is their first experience of kind of being out of the home more, not being at home very often, and education, some more of a kind of formalized educational environment. So the whole concept is new to them. Social learners. So this is around children basically, they learn by watching and copying. They do it with their parents, with their siblings, with other children at the park, and it's no different in the classroom. They are very much social learners. They need to be with others to see what they are doing, copy, and do the same thing. And then this last one around, they're very much in their feelings. So they are motivated based on how they feel and they want to feel good. We all want to feel good, but they particularly want to feel good. So their motivation is very much based on how they're enjoying something. And that will give them motivation to learn. So that's the learner. Let's have a think about the classroom. So if we know that that's the learner and we know that those are the characteristics of the learner, what does that mean in the classroom? What are some of the needs that they might have in the classroom? If we know that fun, great. What kind of classroom environment do we need to consider for this age group? Collaborative, yes, Doris, because we've just said they're social. Dynamic activities. I like it. Yes. Dynamic to reflect some of that energy that they need or that they have and that they're displaying. Movement, Alina, yes. movement. They need to be able to, they can't sit still. So they need some opportunities to move. Oh, and I like that, Sylvia, a place where they listened to. Yes, I agree. I think they've got lots to say, and they want to say it, even if they're still acquiring some of those language skills. They've got things to say. And they're very visual. I agree, Mario. Very, very visual. And Gabrielle are the same, where they can express themselves. Yes. So actually, in some ways, when we're talking about this topic of well-being, it's actually very well suited for a young learner classroom, because all of those themes are very much needs of this age group. So here's some ideas around the type of classroom that is good for a very young learner. So the idea that they need a nurturing environment where they're supported, somewhere where they can feel safe. And I think somebody picked up on this in the previous slide around their language acquisition and the fact that they are actually also still acquiring their own language. So not only are we introducing English, but they're also picking up more vocabulary in their own language. So that is quite unique. You know, adults don't generally have that, or teenagers don't generally have that. They've got quite a high level of their own vocabulary before they start doing a second language. So this age group, they're very much doing things at the same time. So that's quite a cognitive load. They need emotional security, so they run on emotions. They want to feel good, so they need to be able to feel safe that they're able to express them. And I think a few of you said that around a place to express themselves. And I think somebody said, I think Doris said something about collaboration, and I'd agree. Opportunities to develop those social skills through things like collaborative activities are really important because they are such social learners. Okay, last one then. What about you as a teacher and you're in your very young learner classroom? What's a challenge for you? What's a challenge for you? Oh, I like that. Time. Time and resources. Enchanting them. Ah, Amalia, your classroom sounds magical. Student behavior. Yes, I can see, Glenda, that student behavior is a challenge. Right. So and parents come up a lot. I mean, it's hard for parents, isn't it? Because they are handing over for the first time this very precious child. So and maybe, they haven't had experience themselves of having a child at school. So it is a big step for parents, as much as it is for the child. Um, they want to do whatever they want. Yes, I can see they're trying to manage that classroom. It can be difficult. Yes, because they are, like I said, they're motivated by enjoyment. So I'll be taken to the things that I enjoy. Okay, well, that's some great ideas. There are a few challenges. There are lots of positives, but also some challenges. I've only got a few here. You've come up with much more than me. Some of them overlap. Time was the first one, yes, that I thought of as well. It's difficult, isn't it, when you've got limited time in the classroom and you want it to be meaningful and you want them to make progress, but also you need it to be fun and engaging. That's a real challenge. Special educational needs. So at this point, maybe many children might go on and that some extra needs might be identified, but you might not know that at this stage in their lives. They're still very, very young. But it does mean that there could be lots of variations with children. Maybe they have sensory needs that you don't know about and they're starting to emerge. Um, that's a challenge. Understanding that and being, even though they might not have any kind of diagnosis or anything like that. The different levels there are, children learn at very different rates. Some children take a long time to acquire a skill, and then they do something, really, really quickly, and they pick it up in record time. And then other children are a bit more paced. So that's a challenge to manage all of that in one classroom. And then that focus and engagement that we spoke about. So being able to keep their attention so they don't go off and just do what they want to do, but then holding on to that engagement. You've got their focus, but how are you going to hold on to it to complete what you need to complete? So there's some challenges as well, and I hope that's got us all into the kind of the headspace of you as a teacher, your learners in front of you, and then the classroom around you all. Just thinking about all those different things that are going on in that pre-primary context. So well-being can really recognize and address a lot of that. And it's probably why it is so important in this pre-primary context, because it can help to understand the emotional side of our students, and it can help you as teachers to identify those emotions of your students and maybe alleviate some anxiety there around learning and around school. Wellbeing can also help with communication, so it can overcome some of those language barriers, particularly as we've said that we've got both L1 and L2 languages acquiring at the same time. And then it can really help combat some of the social isolation that children can feel if they're not in a school environment. And it can make them feel included. And that's really important because, again, they're social learners. We want them to be learning from others, from you as a teacher, but also from the group that they're in. And just before I move on, I just wanted to make a particular point about speaking. So we will talk about lots of ways you can incorporate well-being, but I wanted to also just highlight that speaking in this classroom, and I think actually a few people mentioned that about they've got lots to say. It's so important for this age group. It's difficult to manage, but actually it's incredibly important for them to the speaking and listening in a language context is just crucial. So here it has an impact on maintaining friendships, which is important, engaging in learning, and that talking and interacting is particularly important. This was a report from the Communication Trust to the UK Parliament about promoting speaking in schools in particular, because they felt that children weren't being given the opportunity to speak, and it was having an effect on their well-being. So I just wanted to highlight that about increasing those opportunities for speaking and listening, even though sometimes it makes the classroom not so quiet. It is really important for this age group. Right, I'm just going to do a quick time check. Okay, we're all right. A quick time check. We're going to look at the final part of the session, and we are going to look at some activities and strategies for incorporating well-being. So if there's anything that any comments you want to make about some of these, or any questions you have as I'm presenting them, then do please put that in the chat. Likewise, if you've got any ideas of things that you do in the classroom, please share those as well. Love to hear about them, because this is a nice, like we say, we want our classrooms to be collaborative. We can make this session collaborative as well. So if you have ideas or you've seen things that have worked in your classroom, please do say, I'd love to hear about them, and I'm sure other people would love to hear about them as well. So let's talk about strategies. This might be an obvious one, maybe. This is about getting to know your learners. This is just a quick list from a book, Engaging Language Learners in Contemporary Classrooms. But I think it's a really good reminder to really get to know, um, yeah, really get to know your learners. So always kind of greet them, remember their names. That might be a little bit difficult. I don't know how many classes you each might have. There might be a lot of children to remember their names, but names are, really personable. So it's try and do that if you can. Try and remember the names of all your students, and then maybe learning something about them, and then kind of dropping it in to conversation. Maybe they have a sibling. Maybe they have a bright yellow school bag. Just observe something unique about them and mention it, because it makes them feel included. As I mentioned, this age group um, this age group, this is their first experience of coming, leaving home and into a different context in terms of an educational context. And so that's a big step for them. So helping them to understand that we have this connection with home by asking about their life outside of school is is really going to be crucial and help them feel that they've not gone to this big scary place. So bring in those connections from home, ask about things at home, get them to talk about things from home or their life away from school to allow them to integrate it into their lives. Another one about recognizing birthdays, really important if you're a child, hugely important. So try and remember that. And then again, some more kind of personal things actually about yourself. So getting to know them, but then also letting them get to know you. So maybe some topics that you are interested in and give them examples. And that should allow them to open up as well. If you're leading by example, if you're able to share some of yourself with them, um, then that will hopefully allow them to see that they can share some of themselves as well. So do also include yourself, not just as a teacher, but as a human being, and role model that kind of behavior. Um, you're right, Mario, it is important. This isn't just exclusive for pre-primary, it is for all ages. It's a good reminder. This is a reminder about repetition and how classroom language is a really good vehicle for repetition. So this is actually from one of our primary courses. It's not pre-primary, so the language level is a bit high on some of the phrases here. But the idea here is that you say the same phrases for the activity or for the instruction. So it means that even if students don't necessarily understand the language, they start to recognize the words, and that helps them to understand what you want them to do. So really good for classroom management. For example, you put up your hands. You could say that differently. You could say raise your hands, put your hands up, hands up. There's lots of different ways you could say that. But actually, for this age group, just say the same one over and over and over again. Because if it's done with an action at the same time, then they will start to understand. If you keep changing the words for the same action, it can be quite confusing. So think about those phrases that you're going to use in the classroom on a regular basis and try to keep to the same one and repeat them and repeat them. Even if they don't understand it initially, they will start to understand it and they might even say them back to you. You might even want to put something like this up in the classroom so that they can see it. And like I said, think about the level, the language levels, some of these, but I think some of these are quite clear. It's your turn, well done. So just repeat the same language over again. This is an important one for pre-primary. Routines. Routines are really important in the pre-primary classroom. They help to establish consistency. They make the lessons predictable, but actually predictable is good because it is a structured environment and then young learners know what to expect. So routines can help improve behaviour because learners have that structure to follow. And it helps them to really develop their listening and their comprehension skills. So very important to try and have routines throughout your lesson that you return to give your lesson a rhythm and to allow your learners to realize, okay, what point are we at? I know what's coming. So there's different types of routines that you can do at different times. So you'll see here, we have the types of routines that open a lesson. They help establish that you're going to be doing English with the children. Saying hello is a really easy one. Saying hello, say hello to your class, ask them to say hello to each other. Everybody says hello. It starts the English lesson. There are other routines, such as timeline ones, where you want to move from one activity to another. And this could be particularly important, I think. Somebody said around how learners just want to do what they want to do. And actually, sometimes you have to bring them back to do an activity for the whole class. So these kinds of timeline routines are very good for getting them ready for another activity. Very similar to transition routines when you want to transition from one activity to another. You might want them to reflect on something before they move on to something else. And then closing routines. So ending a lesson positively is really important, really important. One of the suggestions here is tidying up. Tidying up is a really good way to let children know it's the end. It's the end of the lesson. Anyone else have any other type of routines that they use in class on a regular basis? Pop them in the chat. Does anyone use anything in particular for a routine? Do you do something routinely with your students? Something you do every lesson, like you always say hello, everybody says hello at the beginning. Ah, good morning song. Lovely. Yep, good morning song. Helper of the day is nice as well. I could have a helper of the day. Yes, I wish I don't get that in my job, but I think helper of the day we should all have. A star chart. Yes, a star chart's lovely, isn't it? I think children respond so well when they get that little celebration of you've you've done something well, well done, well done. Oh, I like the empowering expressions, Maria. I wonder what kind of if you could give us an example of an empowering expression, can you type in an empowering expression? I feel good. Is that empowering, maybe? Maybe we could say, or I did well, maybe. That might be empowering. Okay, so we get the idea that um, kind of routines are important, and the more we can build in, the more safe our children will feel. One of the things on there was talking about emotions, and we know, as we've seen, that actually emotions play a big part in well-being. So asking how are you feeling as a routine is actually very useful. Um, Allowing children to express their feelings is going to be very good for them. Maybe actually they've come into class and they're a bit frustrated, or they've had to run to school and they're late. And they might not be able to say that in English, and that's fine, but allowing them to get some of that feeling out and express it is is good for them. So talking about emotions on a regular basis is very good. And maybe you talk about your emotions as well. You might want to model that and say, this morning I'm tired. This morning I'm happy. So remember, they're going to be looking at you and they want to pick up your signals. So you talking about emotions is a good thing as well. Puppets. Anybody use puppets in the classroom? This is one of the puppets that we have at Cambridge. This is called Hug. He's called Hug the Sloth. And he's really good for timeline routines. So he's really good for reflections, being able to ask those questions with students. It's less intimidating to talk to a puppet sometimes than it is to talk to the class or talk even to the teacher. Talking to the puppet actually is sometimes feels safe. And certainly this one, Hug, I mean, he can put his arms around you at the same time. So sometimes actually talking to a puppet or a toy is easier to talk about emotions. I think Christian's just said about knowing how to deal with emotions, and I think you're right. It's very hard to deal with emotions, but maybe the one of these first steps is identifying the emotion. Identifying it is also a really good first step. I feel sad or I feel angry is actually a really important first step in how to deal with emotions. Juliet has asked about this puppet. This is Hug the Sloth. He's from our new pre-primary course called Ready, Steady, Grow. We have some animal characters and he is one of them, but I know Celeste will be giving you details of all our pre-primary courses that we have, so you can see more about them there. This is one of the tips actually from that course, and it talks about confidence and children being in a fantasy world, and how speaking a different language it takes a lot of confidence. So with this role play with the puppets, it really is a way for them to increase their confidence. It means that they're able to go into that fantasy world of talking to toys, and it becomes less scary. Who uses stories? I know people, I think we had some suggestions of stories before. So using stories in the classroom and repeating those stories is really good for well-being, because it means that not only Are they learning new words? They're understanding those questions and answers, so they're understanding how interaction works. But it also means that they're understanding characters, how characters feel, and that what we said about um, feel and function. So feeling around about how we feel, but function, how we're interacting with others around us. Stories are a really good example of how others do that. And so it helps learners to see those different interactions in different contexts. So stories are a really good thing to use in the young learner classroom to and repeat them. Children will love the repetition of them. They'll get to know the characters. So don't be afraid to do the same story. In fact, you'll probably want to move on and they want to stay on the same one. And sometimes that's good for them. This is one of the tips around using stories in terms of getting them to join in. This one says about joining them with animal noises, but maybe lots of stories have repetition in them. Maybe there's a phrase in there. And that's when you want the children to all join in with the same phrase. I'm trying to think of one. I'm trying to think of a phrase, but you know the stories I mean. Do you know the Gruffalo book when they repeat the same rhyme over and over again? If you allow your children to join in that, then really it's a wonderful collaborative activity to do. Um, the gingerbread man, yes, Julia, that's a story that repeats. But it's collaborative, so they're all doing it at the same time together. It means that their confidence is building because you're not just singling out an individual, we're actually doing something as a group activity. I like this idea about what happens next, predicting, seeing what's going to come along in the story next. That's a really good skill for them. So stories, um, and also you can use them for, I know one teacher liked to use them at the end of the lesson, always at the end, so that that became the signifier. We're going to sit at the and read a story, and then we know the lesson's ended. So using them at the same time is helpful. Songs. I really hope you use songs in the classroom. Similar to stories, the repetition of songs, children love it. They'll like the rhythm of the song, they'll like the sounds of the song. It helps them to develop concentration skills. It will help their confidence again and again, those social connections of singing with others, singing with their peers. If they're not that confident in speaking English, and we know that speaking is so important, then getting them to join in with a song is actually a really good way to get them to speak. Asking a child, what's your name directly, and they might be too scared to say in English, but singing a song with, what's your name, and they all say their answer at the same time is actually less scary. So using songs is a great way to build up that nurturing environment that we said was so important. These are some songs from Ready, Set, Grow, the course I mentioned before. It's very simple. Some of them just hello, the hello song. And I know somebody mentioned that they did play a song every time the students come into the classroom. So yes, songs, if you can find them, you get them on YouTube. We've got lots on with our Cambridge materials. Playing them is a real motivator. Yes. Um, Relationships, building relationships. This is an example from actually our life competencies. So we have a framework, the Cambridge Life Competencies Framework, where it looks at skills that are outside of academic skills, things like creativity, collaboration, and what that means for different age groups. We have some specifically for young learners. This activity is actually around building relationships in class, but also understanding differences. So this one's probably a bit too old. So I was going to ask, how would you adapt this for very young learners? Because this requires some literacy skills. There's a circle for what I think, what my partner thinks, and then in the middle, what we both think. But that's quite high level. So how would you adapt that for these younger children? How could you do a similar activity but for younger? Brilliant, Laura. Yes, pictures. Pictures, brilliant. Um, Excellent. So using pictures is a great way, or even getting them to draw something. I mean, you could get them to draw, you could use stickers, you could even get them to cut pictures from magazines or something, and stick those. And that's great for motor skills, for them how to use their hands, cutting and sticking. But it's a nice activity to think about. There are some things I might like, some things my friend might like, and then there's some things that we like together. And that's okay. Not everybody has to like the same thing. There are differences, and then there are similarities. So using some activities to really build those relationships in the classroom, and to show empathy is really important. Okay, the last one. Oh, that last time has whizzed past. I'm sorry, I didn't realize the time. Mindfulness, reflection, and breathing. Um, does anyone do any of these in the class? This is yoga. You can do yoga activities in the class. Does anyone use yoga? Yes, brilliant. And brilliant. All fans of yoga. Fantastic. If you don't have the space or you don't have the equipment to show yoga videos in class, you can still do breathing activities and breathing techniques. So the tip here is around building confidence by asking children to sit up straight and have their heads held high. Um, that physical movement is really good for them for feeling more confident in the classroom. Or maybe you can do some of the yoga movements, but just sitting on chairs if they can't stand up. But anything to get them moving and moving their bodies is going to be good. Breathing, lots of you have mentioned breathing. Again, breathing activities where it allows them to pause, take some deep breaths, is again managing themselves and managing their emotions. So the breathing in, breathing out is really helpful for them, especially when you need them to quieten down. Some of these tips are again in our Cambridge courses, but yoga videos I think you can find on YouTube as well. So today we discussed why wellbeing matters, how we can identify it in the young learner classroom, including the importance of speaking, and then how to integrate it into your lessons. Particularly role modeling it as a teacher, because the teacher as a role model is crucial for this age group. So I think we are at time, but Celeste, do we have time for questions and answers?
Yes, Helen.
Okay.
I haven't seen any question so far, but first I wanted to sorry, I have my camera on, to say thank you. I think it was a wonderful, lovely session, and I think we are all quite relaxed now.
We're doing some breathing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was super interesting, and yeah, lots of ideas, I think, for teachers to implement right away after this session. So if you have any question, you can leave it in the chat.
And we can send out some of those ideas from my slides, Celeste, can't we, afterwards, so people can see. I read them out obviously in this webinar, but actually we might be able to send them some of the information on the slides for how to incorporate some
Yeah,
of those
definitely.
strategies.
We can add it to the follow-up email. So if you will pause it until tomorrow and
Yeah.
add the slides that you consider interesting for teachers.
Or we have a question around writing listening for older students. Oh, around Asperger's. I don't know particularly about Asperger's, but I think, and particularly at 8 or 9 year olds, um, uh, before. So, thinking about how you would help with listening and writing. I think it's, if we're talking in the context of um, well-being, I think it would be to encourage them to try and say how they feel to you so that they might be able to suggest what they find good for them in terms of the learning environment. That's very hard to do. It might have to be done on a one-on-one conversation, but seeing what activities they find difficult and trying to look at those, and then what activities they find easier or they seem better at, and giving them more of those. Was there
um,
another question,
yes,
Celeste?
there are questions around how to use like techniques or steps to work with music with young
Um,
learners.
music with young learners. I would probably, as I said, repetition is so important. But I would probably choose maybe 5 to 10 songs and use the same ones over and over again. Because I think um, they will like to hear the same ones over and over again. And particularly if you do them at stages, like maybe a song, the same song always at the beginning of the lesson or the same song at the end. Um, Having it at certain points in the lesson is very useful. You could always get them to clap their hands in time so that they're participating with the music, or even do actions such as kind of stand up and sit down. They're good ways of using music and physical activity.
Thanks, Helen. Then about first language with young learners, like they want to talk in their native language in
Mm,
class, and how to balance this with the like learning English objectives for the
yeah,
classroom. So
yeah.
any
That
ideas
is
there?
tricky, but I think at this stage, let them speak their first language and just repeat back in English. So allow them to express themselves. We don't want to put them off expressing themselves. So let them speak in their first language, and then we can translate back to them. And that way they will feel that they can still talk. We don't want them to feel that they can't talk in their first language.
Thanks. And the last one here is about pre-primary books with capital letters. If
Um,
if there are those available.
those available. I'm not sure actually, Celeste. I think we'll have to look for some of those. I don't know the answer, I'm afraid. That one we will have to get back to you about the
Quite
capital
specific.
letters.
No worries. Perfect. Well, I think yeah, we don't have any more questions in the chat. Lots of thank you. Great webinar, great session. So this I think like it's been an amazing session and super insightful as well. And thank you very much, Helen, for being with us today so late. And thank you everyone for joining us to this webinar.
Yes, thank
And
you.
we can see you in the next webinar, right?
That would be
Next
lovely.
session.
Yes. And good luck, everybody, with your next classes and your lovely learners, and enjoy it, because I'm sure if you're enjoying yourself, then it will radiate through to your learners as well. So it takes a lot of energy, but it's a wonderful age group to be involved with, because you're going to be setting their little minds ready up for all those next stages. So thank you very much for joining.
Thanks, everyone. See you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.